Okay, we're live.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Glenn Richards here, Chairman of the Newburyport Historical Commission. Welcome to the meeting of Thursday. My notes say 27 August, but it is clearly not 27th of August. It's September 10th. And we'll do the roll call for this meeting. I think everyone is here that's going to be here. We have Christopher Fay. If you guys want to.
Yep, sorry, present.
Sure, it's okay. Peter McNamee.
Present.
Joe Morgan.
Present.
Patricia Pecknick.
Present.
Mr. Ron Zimba.
Present.
And Malcolm Cartwright, maybe take a look and see, Andy, if he's in the, whatever you call the attendees or whatever, the participants.
Yeah, I've just tried to promote him to a panelist. We'll see if he's able to do that.
Okay. And our note taker Gretchen is on the phone as well. Gretchen Joy. So we have a couple of things. It's a relatively light agenda. We have two main items. We'll get right into it. Maybe we can end a little bit early. First item is a continuation from a couple of weeks ago, 21-23 Walnut Street. This is home of Jeff and Nora Dodge. They're represented by Lisa Mead of NPC. Again, a continuation. I'll just give a very brief recap, and then I'll let Ms. Mead, who I assume is going to be speaking for the applicant, make a presentation. So when we last met, we reviewed this, and the Historical Commission had a few concerns that were raised with the applicant, and they were about the removal of a door and a window on the east facade, position of the addition being the same place as the house, and also having board and batten siding, the dormer and the old part of the house, and some structural issue concerns. And members of the public raised some concerns about removal of a chimney and the hardy plank siding. And so I know that there have been some new plans and an updated presentation that I'm sure the applicant is anxious to review with us that have addressed many of these issues. So we're going to see where we stand now, see if we can wrap this up tonight. So I think that brings us more or less up to date. Oh, there was one other item I'll just mention. There was some discussion both via emails and in the meeting about the fact that originally this started out as a demolition delay request, and then there was the historical report. There's a lot of research done on that, and we are following the correct procedure that the ZBA is this permit granting authority for the entire project. The roofline change is sort of rolled into that. So that is the procedure that we're following. This committee I will draft a report for the Zoning Board of Appeals with the input from the rest of the commission to face that. Okay, so on that note, is Ms. Mead, are you ready to talk to us?
I am. Thank you very much. And Mr. Port, while I'm doing this, if you could get the presentation up, I would appreciate it. So on behalf of Jeff and Nora Dodge, I'm Lisa Mead, Telemac Costa 30 Green Street. And with me this evening is Eileen Graff, who is the architect on the project. Just as a little bit of a recap, I might remind folks that Jeff and Nora Dodge intend to move to this house and make it their home. Jeff actually the Dodges grew up right next door. And so he's coming back to his neighborhood, and he's hopeful that it will be a home which he can live in with his family for some time to come. So we previously had a meeting, and at that meeting, the chair and Mr. McNamee asked for a site visit. I believe that Mr. McNamee might have gone by himself. I don't know. He wasn't able to attend the visit that was scheduled. The chair came out again for a site visit. And we went all through the house to review some of the items that we had spoken about in the hearing, and mostly relative to the condition of the addition on the rear, which was later added, and I'm going to put that in quotes because it's still old, but it was later added than the original house. We provided information again related to the structural engineer Joe Fix, who has over 30 years of experience. And he opined on the foundation, the framing, the joist, the roof structure, the poor condition of supports. And actually what was evident when we went out on the site visit is that even the beams in the ceiling barely touch the rafters, barely sitting on top of the walls in the addition. In some instances, I would say less than an inch, but the chair can comment on that. So it's our belief that the addition has no remaining value and cannot be made for reuse. But in response to the comments from the board relative to some of the design issues, we did make some changes. And so, Andy, if you could move to the next page, please. What I want to show you is a couple of photos before we get into the specific design issues. So on the right side of the house is going to be where the dormers proposed set back, and Eileen can talk about the details of how far it's set back. But you can see this is across the street, and you can see the vegetation, the trees that exist. And if you go to the next photo. This is looking down the street, down the sidewalk. That view would be completely covered as a result of a number of mature trees. And then Andy, at the next photo. And then this is across the street, further down the street. And you can see that the whole view on that side of the structure would be out of view of the public where the proposed dormer is going to go. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And why don't you go down to the first elevation, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eileen. These are the existing elevations. You're familiar with these. If you can go to the next one, Andy. There we go. These are the proposed elevations. So there's a couple of things that were changed in response to the board's concerns and comments. And Eileen, I'll turn it over to you to go over those.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. So these elevations are perfect to convey the changes. So the front elevation has remained the same since the last meeting that we saw you. Again, reiterating that the proposed dormer on the top drawing is set back 8 inches from the wall plane below it. And again, to revisit why we couldn't go further, we're working with an existing original stair below it. So we're trying to create a stacked stair that will gain access to the 3rd floor with as minimal interruption to the feel of this continuous stairwell. So we were able to get 8 inches, which I think was pretty generous given the conditions, tight conditions below it. And then in the elevation below, we can see some of the changes. Thank you, Andy. On the bottom left side, where the 1-story aspect is, we once had the board and batten. So now we are showing it replaced with shingles. What we can't see in this view is that 1-story addition is actually pushed back 6 inches from the facade of the original 1850s structure, so that we can expose the pilaster on the corner and give it some breathing room. Then as you travel to the centered original there, oops, sorry, Andy, just one more comment on the last draw. Thank you. Our original proposal on that top row of the 2nd floor windows, we had added that we had proposed removing the centered window, and we have brought back a more decorative moment there by proposing an oval shaped window there. And below that, we propose introducing a trellis of sorts to help bring back some of the balance or the void that was once where the side door entry existed. And there are, in the current edition, there are shingles. So we are bringing back some materials that already exist on this structure. So we feel like that would be a nice complement to the clapboards and giving some of that texture. And then on the next drawing, Thank you. And here's where you can see on that top drawing in the bottom right side there, you can see the step in of the 1-story addition. Again, giving the corner some breathing room, and thank you. And then also just to point out, bringing back some detail on the gable end of the addition. I actually find it curious, the existing addition, I'm not sure as I sort of study it, even though the 1900 Sanborn maps show the footprint of that 16 by 24 footprint, and then the side porch as well. But I'm just kind of curious over time if in fact that was a 2-story. It has such simple detailing, whereas the covered porch is a little bit more elaborate. So I wonder, I don't know if you know, just curious in this regard. And it might explain some of the sort of lack of framing, even the way it butts into some of the windows. It just, it's something that when I was studying the detailing of it, have been curious about. So then looking on the lower drawing, just to give more clarity again on the dormer proposed, it sits, the front face of it, from the front facade sits back 5'6" and stretches 12'6". And as those photos demonstrated earlier in the presentation, that's really where a lot of the mature trees, it wouldn't surprise me if some of those limbs in fact have to be trimmed back in order to do the work over here. I certainly think this is where the squirrels might be getting their you know, highway into the building, actually, is jumping from those trees over there. So they do exist in a very close manner to that corner of the house. And I believe if we keep sliding to the right there, Andy, don't believe we have any changes. That's all as was originally proposed in our previous presentation. So again, going back to the structure and the engineer's review of the existing structure, the framing is certainly inadequate in many ways, and I'd like to hear what the meeting that you had on site and your feeling there too. I mean, certainly you can see when you poke your head into the openings at the foundation, it's really rather an example of just an evolution of time where, because it was a 2-family, it truly just didn't get the attention that it needed when they would put a partition up and then break it down, etc. It just has over time shown and unfortunately bore the brunt of some poor craftsmanship over the years. So Elisa is right in that the framing on the roof rafters, the way they sit, they don't bear on a bulk of that framing. It's actually, if you want to call it the toe, it's really doing, the engineer did talk about that when we were there together, and it really has poor contact for bearing capacity. So with that, I'll pass it back to Lisa to continue on the presentation.
Pardon the interruption. Can I ask just 2 quick questions for Ms. Graff?
Yes.
And could you go up 1 page to that prior drawing? I just want to see if I'm reading this correctly. I mean, there's a dotted line on the addition,
Yes.
and you can see where it goes across. Is that the ceiling height inside?
Inside of the new, correct. Yes.
Okay, all right. So I just was kind of, because obviously you've kept the roof is lower, you know, making it subordinate, etc. But in order to be able to stand up, so you've got that kind of clipped corner ceiling. Okay, I just want to confirm that I was interpreting that correctly.
That's correct. The original 2-story structure there is about 1 foot lower in wall height. So we wanted to raise it by giving some height back, but not too much in order to maintain its secondary position to the original structure.
Right. Yeah, and this drawing also answered my other question. I was going to ask if that 6-inch setback was enough to expose the entire pilaster, but it sounds like it's not quite, or it looks like, I should say, it's not quite enough.
It's not quite, they're pretty wide. I want
Yeah.
to say over 12 inches
Right.
even.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry for the interruption. That was the only two questions I had at this point. Did you want to, Ms. Mead, did you want to carry on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, the last slide we have, this is a slide of an example of a Greek revival that's taken off the Preservation Trust website. And you'll note, we do it for two reasons. There was a comment at the last meeting relative to 2/2 windows, which we're proposing, of course, and here is an example of a Greek revival with 2/2 windows. But also the center window on the side there that's round. And so we thought that that was interesting. And, you know, obviously we picked up on that, and the Dodgers like that for the replacing the window empty
Right.
area. So I just wanted to provide that as a sample. But other than that, we'd like the commission to consider making a recommendation that the addition can be removed, and the proposed plan move forward.
Okay, well, I'll make a couple of quick comments and I'll ask my colleagues for their questions, comments, etc. Ms. McGrath asked, raised the question actually of did we see anything of interest on the site visit that either confirmed or didn't confirm what had been presented. And so I can answer that question and say yes. It pretty much did confirm what had been presented. So I was able to take a closer look. I had kind of had a quick look earlier, but and I looked also in the you can't call it, kind of a semi-crawl space. Anyway, I came away from that with the impression that I don't really have any cause to question your engineer's findings on that. That's it. As far as, I have a couple of, other comments, but I'll hold off for the moment. I'll let my colleagues and peers, if you want to raise your hand, I'll be looking, let me check, see if anyone has a hand up. Anyone want to make a comment or ask a question? Don't tell me the cat's got your tongue. If you don't talk, I'll continue to palaverate, as my mother-in-law used to say. Christopher Fay, I see a hand.
Yes, and I apologize if I missed this last meeting, but is there a reason why that side door is being removed? I assume it's for wall space, but
yeah, do you want to, yeah, Ms. Graff, do you want to respond to that?
Sure, I'm happy to. That door is a struggle as far as the sense that in standing in one position, you will have 3 doors to sort of choose for entry, and you're right in that it's an interior decision as well, for function within the rooms, but it is something that they feel strongly, Nora and Jeff feel strongly that it is not needed on the elevation and the way their house looks. They won't use it, and they feel comfortable with the 2 doors that we are going to leave in location.
Yeah, it was affected the interior layout, Chris. A couple quick comments I'll make.
So can I just?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
This seems like a unique architectural feature to have sort of the 2 doors. I assume the 2 original doors that I just feel like it'd be a shame if it's gone.
Yeah. Tom Coulter-John of the Preservation Trust raised that same issue, Chris, last week. So were you not at the first meeting? I don't recall.
He was, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay.
I was there. I think I just, between the different doors, I must have got mixed up. You remember, okay. Tom mentioning how losing that door would be.
Okay.
Agree with that.
Yeah, to that, we also had a number of board members talked about the 5-bay configuration. So over the past week or two, I can't tell you how many Victorians I've looked at in Newburyport. I mean, there are quite a few. And I found an enormous variety of window layouts and bay layouts. As with this house, typically with the side entry gable end Greek Revival, the side that has the main entrance door also typically has a stair right there, as this one does. So there are very often no windows immediately on that side, until you get further back. So that was very common. On the opposite side, where you've got, this layout, I've seen actually not that many 5 bays, a lot of irregular placement. I did see some that literally looked very much like the original proposal, where with just the middle window and door removed, where they had 4 windows spaced with a wider space in the middle, but not quite as big and expansive empty space as I think we have here, but almost. So it's not unheard of. And yeah, I think putting in the oval window on the second floor does, in a way, we get into this argument about, are we preserving or are we almost redesigning, but in a way that's tasteful and consistent with what may have been done back in the day. And it's a risky limb to go out on. I have to, admit I've done a little bit of myself in my own house, try to do some of that, but it's very, it's dangerous territory. From a preservation standpoint, there isn't any question really that it would be preferable to save the original door, especially where it has that treatment and so on. But I understand the internal, it's a similar argument that comes up with the dormer. There's, on the one hand, there are the needs and requirements of the owner and for, how they want to use the house. There's the normal evolution of these houses. Any house that's as old as this, or even not even as old, has typically undergone a lot of evolution over its lifetime to accommodate changing tastes, changing requirements, changing family dynamics, what have you. So we're, someone's got to put that all together. It's really, in this case, the ZBA has got to make a final determination. We will give them our opinion as to what the preservation requirements are and what would be ideal from a preservation point of view, and what will have the least negative impact on the neighborhood and so on. And we'll talk more about the dormer, I'm sure. Now I see Ms. Pechnick has a hand up. Did you want to talk, Patricia?
Yes, thank you. My advice to the ZBA about conditions under which the special permit should be approved would be retaining the original entryway and window. I think it's interesting what other Greek revivals have or may have had, but I'm just focused on what is on this house right now. What does this house look like? So I advise against demo on the main historic house. I think that that entryway and the window above it should be retained. I'm not persuaded by the substitution of the porthole window and the trellis. I agree with Commissioner McNamee's position, as stated at the last meeting, that the absence of the door and window create a very stark plane. And I think I agree with Christopher Fay that, I don't see the reason from our point of view of why we would advise that door should be demoed and that window should be demoed. Again, what does this house look like? Not like, what do other houses look like? That's what this house looks like.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Patricia. Anybody else want to weigh in on either of these things? Mr. Morgan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Richards. I think that whatever can be done to strengthen that main facade on the what we're looking at right here, and I guess that's the west elevation of the main facade. Whatever can be kept and strengthened on that, I think would supersede any comments that I would have, like on the rear L. I would be very open to replacement of the rear L. I mean, certainly due to its existing condition, and I think it's acceptable as proposed. But I still feel that we could strengthen, that should be strengthened, the main facade by weakening it, by removing the existing door and the window. I think is not the right way to go. And I also remember Mr. Coulter, John, the last time he mentioned, he was very passionate about the chimney, if you'll remember that discussion. Yeah. And so I also believe that that's an element that should be preserved if possible. I don't know exactly why it's being removed, other than the fact that it quite logically it's not needed anymore. But if there was a way to preserve it, if it was in good enough shape to maintain, as well as the window and the door, I think that I would be amenable to other interventions here without any problem. Thank you.
Okay. How about we haven't? Thank you, Joe. What about? I'm sure you guys have thought about the dormer. I think I was kind of expecting that there would be a lot of discussion about that. I know I've got my own opinions. And I see two hands immediately went up. Ms. Pecknick, do you want to comment on the dormer?
Yes, first of all, I agree with Mr. Morgan that focusing on preserving and protecting the historic house, the main structure, is more important to me than design, things on the addition. And, we're not deciding here if there can be a dormer. We're deciding whether it's appropriate to do roof demolition on this house to install a non-conforming dormer that meets the ridge line and then it's visible from a public way. So in my view, the dormer size and placement are wrong. I understand that it will solve a problem the architect is facing. I don't feel it's our role to take that into consideration. I think we have been fairly consistent, as Mr. Fay said, about understanding and accepting that dormers, non-conforming dormers on rear or not visible elevations, we've sort of said, okay, we get that, but we're here to protect the house. And I think that dormer will have an impact on the house and on the streetscape. So I can't support that shed dormer meeting the ridge line and the size and placement.
Notice, Joe, your hand is still up. Did you want to add a comment on the dormer?
I hadn't intended to, but I will.
Well, I just see your hand is still up.
Yes, I would. I agree with Commissioner Peck that it's the inappropriate. It's possibly, most likely, the inappropriate design. I don't like the shed dormer type of dormer. I don't know what other options there are. I don't know if this is the typical response to the need for a dormer over a stair in order to access an attic space. The shed dormer extending to the ridgeline, though, I think could be attenuated somewhat by some other design and still achieve the headroom, the head clearance that you need over the stair. I don't object to the dormer in general. I don't have a problem with that. So thank you.
Yeah, one thought I had, and actually someone else initially started this thought in my head, and because the shed design was bugging me too, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it until I looked at a lot of examples to try to figure out what it was about it, and it finally dawned on me that the whole essence of Greek Revival design is that columns and triangular pediment there, that's like the essence of Greek Revival design, that Greek temple look. And the shed dormer has a completely different configuration. So I did actually see historic examples pictured of Greek Revival house with dormers. They weren't wide though. They were just individual one window type dormers with what are sometimes called doghouse dormers, a gabled type roof. So I think that if a gabled roof configuration could be cooked up, either a Nantucket style dormer where there's two, I'll call them doghouse style dormers. That's, I think, how people generally refer to them, with a little bit of a bridge between to get the required width, or possibly even, you know, one wide thing that had that same kind of triangular pediment on top and the same kind of Greek revival treatment. The roof would come straight out, you know, level, and then be gabled perpendicular to the main roof. If you're kind of following me, I'm gesturing here. I'm not sure how helpful that is, but you know, and I'm not an architect, but those are some of the ideas that struck me. So you know, it's you know, not up to us to kind of redesign the thing, but I think the only question I would ask is, would something that was more more compatible with the Greek revival aesthetic be more palatable to you commissioner guys? And I do see Ron, we'll get to you, and Peter, let you guys talk too. In fact, I'm not sure who was first. Peter,
Peter's had his hand up for a while.
Okay, Peter McNamee, want to weigh in?
Sure, thank you. I chose to walk by the house rather than go to a scheduled tour or whatnot, because I wasn't overly concerned with the findings of the engineer. That's not my purview. So I was more interested in that shed dormer, and I wanted to experience it from the street rather than on the property. And I stood there for quite some time, and part of the argument in favor of it is that it has minimal impact because of the foliage surrounding it. And that's true. It's a little less true as soon as the dormer goes in, because as the architect noted, those branches probably would be trimmed back, and that was the first thing I thought when looking at it straight on, that they're going to be right into it. So those would get trimmed back. It would become a little bit more visible then. And that led me to think next, how does this look? Forget about trees. If there weren't any trees there, how does this dormer affect me? And it depends on your perspective. When you're standing on the 25 Walnut Street side and looking at the house, while I'm not a big fan of the shed dormer either, it has a much lower impact, even though it's a much bigger element. It presents a broader face. There's more detail to look at and whatnot. And while it's still a shed dormer, it doesn't really have that much of an impact. As you move around to the front of the house, it has a more and more, in my mind, negative impact, because something that Glenn touched on occurred to me. We've got a Greek revival with a broken pediment, and here we've got a shed dormer that just sort of starts and ends and isn't consistent with the sort of the overall design sensibility of the Greek revival. So I agree with what Glenn was just saying with regards to, are there other shed dormers? Because I understand the need for the headroom, and I can see a world where some sort of shed dormer design, or not shed dormer design, but dormer design would work or be acceptable at least. But this doesn't strike me as it. Moving around to the side of the house, where the doors at question, the addition of the small oval window above, I don't dislike. I think it's a little eccentric, and that's kind of fun. I think it's probably visually, in my mind, it doesn't accomplish what its predecessor does. That symmetry and that balance, it does provide sort of a centerpiece for the bays on either side of it, but it presents too little. It's too small, and it's really no match for the existing window. You know, that bank of 5 bays on the second floor, I think it's very appealing. It's a very satisfying appearance. And the door, I can't get away from the door. I just don't see removing that beautiful entryway. And I understand the owners and the architect's point that you stand at that house and wonder which door you're going to walk in, that's true. But that's a momentary thing, and it's a momentary confusion and can be sorted out one way or another. Whether or not the door is used, if it's a dumb door or not used, if it can be incorporated into the interior design and made a feature, great. If it can't be, wall it over or whatnot and make it a non-functioning door. But I can't see it leaving the facade of that house.
Right. And there is precedent for that, as you probably know, Peter, that one on Merrimack Street where they did decide that they could keep the door, would be non-functional and so on. Okay, see, now I know, Ron, you wanted to say something, and I see we'll get to you as well, Chris.
Yes, thank you, Glenn. I think maybe I'm going to annoy my colleagues once again on the subject of dormers. I've done it several times already, and I think I have the outlier's position on dormers here. Overall, I think what we've got here is a very well executed, very well conceived transformation of a building in a neighborhood that needed to be transformed. And I'm sure that all the neighbors are cheering on this renovation of the house, because I did a brief site visit. I did a brief site visit while I was preparing for the 8/27 meeting, which I then failed to attend. But that addition is a total mess. I walked around in it a little bit, and I was even a little worried about tripping over something or having something fall on me. But so I think this improves the neighborhood, renovating this. And the dormer really, to me, is quite inconspicuous. And you see in some of the reading I've done on this, I've found that dormers can be fine in a Greek Revival building if they are relatively inconspicuous. In other words, don't put them on the front of the building, but tuck them away on the side of the building. And I feel that that's what has been done here. So where I come out is, I think the presence of that dormer, which if I had my druthers, I probably wouldn't want to keep it. But the presence of the dormer is not enough to justify rejecting this entire project, which seems like a well-conceived, well-designed project that helps the neighborhood overall in a significant way. That's all I.
Okay, thanks, Ron. You triggered something, but I forgot what it was I was going to say. Chris, Freddie, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, just real quick, because you stole my thought from earlier, but the Greek Revival, just on the dormer, it breaks the symmetry. I think that's what's interesting about these houses, right? There's this classic, simple architecture, but
yeah,
and it just, so I would actually see if we can explore the Glenn's idea of a smaller space, if it's just a matter of headspace. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And technically, I wasn't even necessarily saying it had to be, quote, smaller. In some respects, it might be slightly higher, especially out toward the eave, because of what I was suggesting. But I'll let Ms. Graff wrestle with that particular one if it comes to that. Okay, so now I see 3 hands up, but those people just forgot to put their hand back down. Ron, Christopher, and Peter.
No, Glenn, I have another comment to make on.
Sure, go ahead.
In the reading that I did, it was noted by some of the people who follow additions to historical homes that sometimes when you put a dormer in, there are many reasons for dormer, they said, but sometimes when you put a dormer in, you kind of draw unusual attention to it by using different materials or a different color or something that's different that makes it evident to everybody that it's an addition. Maybe there's a place for that theory here.
Well, actually, that's kind of why I was suggesting a design that, as Christopher was just saying, was more in keeping with that, Greek revival, Greek temple look and aesthetic, and that it is, like I said, very symmetrical. It's, well, in fact, you could see in the image that's on the screen right now, you can see it on both the front and side facade. I believe that's the east facade, Joe, that we're looking at there, where the existing door is. And you can see how with the pilasters, they're not actual columns, but they're clearly imitating that Greek column effect with the, and in the front, many Greek revivals have the, that pediment that goes all the way across the front at the top of the column level, at the eave level. This one is broken, but it's a similar effect. All right. I had a couple, let's see, any other, Peter, your hand is still up. Did you want to say anything more?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to say that the position that Commissioner Ziemba was just voicing is not too terribly different from mine, although they sound on reflection to be pretty different. I too can see a dormer up there. I don't picture every building, frozen as a museum piece, and I understand the need for functionality. So my point being, that's not the dormer in my mind, because you do need to protect the integrity of the original design of the building and not detract from it. And I think just a plain shed dormer does detract from it. So something a different design sensibilities along the lines of what Chairman Richards was proposing or talking about would possibly work. And that's it. The dormer is not a reason to reject the whole project in my mind.
Right.
It's something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, just so we're clear, this commission doesn't have the authority to approve or reject the project. We are going to present our recommendations and findings to the Zoning Board of Appeals and kind of lay out for them how we view the whole thing and what areas, in what areas we think, if we just did, what's the word I'm looking for? If we don't feel, if we feel if some part of the project is going to have too much of a deleterious effect, we'll make that point. And we're going to try to make, I'm going to do a better job of following up with the ZBA, attending the meetings and so on, so that, they're very clear on what it is we're communicating to them and why. Okay. So Ron, your hand is still up, but I assume you just haven't put it down yet. Okay, let me have, well, before I had a couple of questions that I just want to ask you guys that I'll need to know answers to. I want to kind of, as I write the report, make sure that it's consistent with, the commission and not just me. But before I do that, I wonder if Ms. Graff, if you had any reaction to the comments about the dormer design, want to say anything about that or not? You don't have to. I'm just wondering if you want to respond to that in any way.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, it's all great feedback. We actually had discussed the idea of doing a gable, but as you had alluded to, the width of it makes it a little challenging to be more of the the cute doghouse, right, of a
Right.
single window. So it would have to be a pretty shallow gable to make it happen. You know, our decision was to go with something of the shed, and I think I mentioned this in the last meeting, mostly picking up on the simplicity of the rear the rear addition, and not wanting to draw too much attention to it. But I completely understand the ideas around the sort of balance of the pediment, the gable end, and such. So all your comments have been heard, and I will certainly talk with Nora and Jeff if that is something they want to consider.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So let me see. So, yeah.
Lisa Mead, could I
Oh.
just add a couple of things relative to some of the comments?
Sure.
So just as a reminder of the board, and I want to pick up on a comment that Mr. McNamee said, this isn't a museum. And in fact, the Dodgers are going to great lengths to renovate this house back to a single family. So it's currently a 2-family and all cut up and not taken care of. And so they're trying to renovate the house and have it be a house that the street and the city can be proud of. And they want it to function like a real house. It's not a museum. And while they certainly appreciate the board's comments relative to the door on the side, they have pretty strong feelings about things on houses and architecture that need to function, and are not there just for show, but are there because they actually do something and perform a task or a function. And Mrs. Dodge is an architect. She understands all of these items. Jeff works in the construction area and has grown up with this. Obviously, you all know his brother Steve. So they're very sympathetic to some of the concerns that you've talked about, but the functionality of things that remain on the home are important to them as a homeowner and somebody who would like to bring this home into the next century as a living example of, you know, an older historic home that now functions in the 21st century. So I just wanted to add those comments because I think sometimes there's a difference between restoration and renovation. Nobody's proposing to put a preservation restriction on this house, but to have it be a functioning single-family home. And I just wanted to make sure I added that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Mead. So well, in the first hearing, we did allow some public comment. I don't want to drag things out too long. But I do want to, if there are members of the public that really feel they would like to make a comment, why don't you raise your hand, then I'll give it a minute or two. And if there are some hands raised, we'll maybe allow just a minute or two for some brief comments. And I'd ask you to, if you do have a comment, and I do see a hand went up, introduce yourself with your name and address so we know who you are. And please keep your comments brief, and we'd appreciate that very much. So Andy, I see, looks like Skip Short. I assume that's a gentleman, and you've been unmuted, Mr. Short, if you want to make a brief comment.
I would, thank you, Mr. Richards. I am Skip Short, 25 Walnut Street. I live in the house directly next door with my wife. I've known Jeff for most of my life and had a chance to meet Nora when they first bought the house. They've been very forthcoming with us, showing us the plans at all times, making sure that since that proposed dormer is on our side of the property, that that we're comfortable with it, that it's being done tastefully. We've also spent time working on our own house with Eileen and find her to be, certainly one of the top architects in our area and very respectful of the historical nature of the city in which we all live and love, and I have no doubt in my mind that, one, turning this property back into a single-family house is very consistent with its original construction, and that, you know, any changes that they plan to make will be tastefully done, and it will be a much more beautiful house than it is certainly now, and will fit quite nicely in with our neighborhood.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Short. And even, yeah, we all admit, right, that that last bit was, it's a low bar at the moment, but yeah, and I understand your comments completely. All right, we'll close the public comment period then. I don't see any other hands. So my fellow commissioners, I started working on the report, and I had a couple of things that I just want to confirm that I don't think they require any vote or anything, but let me read off some of the key findings that I think have somewhat of a consensus, and then I'll ask if any of you have any strenuous objection.
Glenn,
hearing-
sorry, this is Andy.
Yeah.
I just wanted to note, okay, just, sorry, I started on another raised hand in the audience. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. It looks like Stephen Dodge is raised.
Yeah.
His hand.
Okay, we missed Stephen Dodge. All right, since he's so well known to us, I guess I'll reopen the public hearing briefly for Mr. Dodge to make a brief comment.
Okay, Steve Dodge, 22 Union Street, Newburyport. I just wanted to say, I'm going to be overseeing this project. And also, I just wanted to say that I spent 8+ years on the commission, and I saw many projects similar to this that just, they went through, we saw it as a favorable project. Not only, you're saving an old structure, but like Lisa said, you're bringing it into the 21st century, and that's necessary. And I did that with my own house, and I've seen it done with countless homes in Newburyport, older homes that were brought up to snuff and still retained a lot of their historic character, blended into the neighborhood. And I think, Commissioner Ron, he hit it right on the head that, it's an excellent project to bring the neighborhood, it fits in with the neighborhood, and, it's going to be a home for somebody. It's not,
Right.
It's not going to be, affordable housing or anything like that. So, I just ask that you all present a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, now, getting back to what I was about to do. So I want to just run these. I got about 5 items here that I'll just read them off and then give you guys a chance to respond to see if any of them sounds like it's not something you could go along with, or if I got something wrong. The first one is that we don't really have any objection to the structural or the remaining value issue. I don't take that statement literally, that the ordinance says something about no remaining value or whatever it is, yeah, I mean, there's some value, but you get the idea. So that we don't have any problem with that or objection to that. We are, the inset of the addition has removed that prior objection. The third is that it sounds like for the proposed plan on the east wall with that oval window and the trellis, my sense is that the commission sees the preservation point of view is that those should stay. Number 4, on the dormer, this one is a little bit tough. From a strict preservation point of view, it shouldn't be there, but we understand from, like Mr. Dodge was just saying, what the need is and the need to be flexible, all of that, but perhaps something that was designed in such a way that it was more compatible with the Greek revival aesthetic. That sounds like most of the commission would find that less objectionable, but I'll put it that way. And finally, there was one that we didn't really talk about tonight, and that's that, you know, I believe this was mentioned that the wood trim and siding and so forth, well, I know they want to replace the clapboards with hardy pike. And by the way, I did do a search, and if you do a search on problems with hardy plank, you will find information on that, including the existence of a class action lawsuit against hardy plank. So Steve, you might want to look into that at any rate, but that's not an issue for us. You guys can worry about that. But particularly the wood trim, like the pilasters and so forth, that, you know, would want to have assurances that those would be restored. By restored mean, you know, just scrape them down, repaint them, unless there's really, they're irretrievably gone, like, you know, like some, you know, the footing is totally rotted out or whatever. So that's what I had noted. So let me stop there. Did anyone have any strong reaction to any of those? Mr. Morgan, your hand shot up.
Yes, I just like to add the chimney,
Okay.
as an item that would be preferably preserved here.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, he's on the commission.
Yeah, you know, and that's interesting that the plans on the first floor plan that shows what certainly looks like a fireplace in the front room of the first floor, but there's I don't see where there's any flue or chimney for it. But that's, you know, that's, I don't know, maybe it's some kind of something else. Okay, any other commissioner of any, let's see, Patricia?
Yes, I was just gonna say ditto on the chimney. And just to say, you know, I'm personally, I'm very happy that this house is getting the love and care that it much deserves. I know people who live on the street who will be very happy about it. I'm a big fan of Steve Dodge. It was great to hear his voice. Will it improve the neighborhood is, of course, a question for the ZBA. The only question for us is, will it impact the city's historic assets? And I appreciate that we confined our discussion to that, although I appreciate the support of the neighbors for the project.
Yeah, and there were, that's what I was going to mention when Mr. Short made his comment, that there were, I think, a total of 3 letters from abutters that supported the project. But again, that's more appropriate for the ZBA's consideration, as you said. Okay, well, I think we can wrap this up. Now I see, Ron, your hand is still up. Did you just not put it down, or did you want to say something? You're muted, Ron. All right, I'm assuming you're all set. Okay, well, very good. Then if that's the case, I'll work on that and follow up with any of you if I need to clarify anything for the report. I'll start working on that. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, if we may, which is 123 State Street, 123 State Street. This is a DCOD demo delay project. And we had some, well, the calculated demolition was just under 25%, but we had some questions about that because there's some inconsistencies we found, or some potential demo that didn't seem to be on the plan.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Mead. Now, I know you're representing the applicant in this case.
Yes, and I'm going to make this really easy for you and the commission. So Lisa Mead on behalf of Crane Properties. Given the issues that you raised late today, Mr. Chair, which were valid but needed some calculations and some review, we're going to ask for continuance for 2 weeks to your next meeting to be able to take a look at that and make sure, double check it, and make sure with Jennifer that it's accurate, and then present something to you. Okay.
All right. Well, in that case, that does make things a little bit simpler. For the sake of expediency, I'll go ahead and make a motion. The motion is that this matter be continued without prejudice to the next meeting, which, let me quick glance at the calendar. Today's the 10th. That would be the 24th of September. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it sounded like Mr. Fay. So let's see, Mr. Fay, are you a yes?
I'm a yes.
Okay, Mr. McNamee?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Ms. Pecknick?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ziemba? think you might be muted, Ron. You're still muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yes.
Yes, okay. It was a little cut off, but I believe that was a yes. We never did get Malcolm, right? No, all right, and the chair is a yes also. Okay, so yeah, we'll continue that, Ms. Mead. And if you have any questions about what the puzzlement was, and actually before, well, I did it again. We've voted to continue it, but I had something to add on it, which I know technically is inappropriate. So there were some things that appeared to be not on the features that are on the house today, but weren't on the existing drawings. So what I'll do is we'll have the, we'll make sure that the planning board has those items and forwards them to you so that those can be looked at as well.
That would be great. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay. So those of you, I know, Tricia, I think you had found some oddities. So make sure that Caitlin gets those and she can forward them on to Ms. Mead and Crane Properties for review.
There's no doubt as to where,
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, very good. There are a couple other things. Let me go here. Under other business, this isn't anything we need to discuss or anything, but I just want to let everyone know who doesn't already know that the preservation restriction for 14 Titcomb Street, this is the Central Congregational Church, has been in the process quite a while. The new improved, I should say, and pretty much entirely redone preservation restriction has been conditionally approved by the Mass Historical Commission. So we'll put that on our agenda probably for the next time for us to, and you'll have a chance to review that. But I'm not expecting that to be particularly controversial, as I think all the things that were problematic have been fixed on it, but we'll all take a good look at that and verify that. And also on the subject of PRs, I wanted to publicly thank Mr. Morgan, Commissioner Joe Morgan, who has just been doing a super job helping with the PR for the Newburyport Public Library. That seems to be going along very well. So thank you very much, Joe. And,
Thank you, Joe.
My pleasure.
And so that'll be moving right along. Did you all have a chance to look at the draft minutes?
Yes.
Okay, actually, I don't know if Gretchen can talk or not. There was one thing that struck, and maybe someone else can correct me if I'm wrong. In the minutes, it said that the Walnut Street house was more prominent because it was set further back, but seemed like to me that it wasn't, it's a bit higher perhaps, but it's pretty close to the street. It didn't seem to me like it was set further back. I was just wondering if that was something I was confused about, or if that was actually
I had said like it's set higher up on that, like there's a hill and number 25 is set way back and high, and then number 1 is set on a little hill and the other houses are right at the street. So I'd said something that it's set, I may have used the word back when I meant up, more prominent because it's up. So it's probably my fault.
Okay. All right, you'll fall on your sword for that one, right? Yeah. All right, so we'll just make that minor correction. So with that minor correction, that it's not actually further back from the street, but I think we all agree that it does have a position by nature of its topography. It is fairly prominent.
That's it. That's what I should have said, Glenn. Thank you. Nature of the topography is more prominent.
Okay.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, that's what you get when your mother is an English teacher. So is there a motion to approve those minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that sounds like Mr. Ziemba. So we'll go through the roll call again. Mr. Fay?
Yes.
Mr. McNamee?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Ms. Pecknick?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ziemba?
Yes.
And myself is yes, so we'll approve those minutes with that minor correction. What else? Anything else? I think the only other thing is a motion to adjourn. Is there one to be heard?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Yep, I recognize the voice. There was one thing, these Zoom meetings getting better at that. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I think that was Mr. McNamee, right?
Yes.
Okay, so roll call again. Mr. Fay,
Yes.
Mr. McNamee,
Yes.
Mr. Morgan,
Yes.
Ms. Pecknick,
Yes.
Mr. Ziemba,
Yes.
And me, the chair, yes. That officially adjourns tonight's meeting. Thank you to our note taker. Thank you, Andy and Caitlin. Thank you, Andy, for running the show, so to speak. You must be getting exhausted from all these Zoom meetings, so we definitely appreciate you doing that work.
No problem. Thanks.
Okay, on that, I'll say we bid everyone good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.